And welcome everyone. As you can tell by just those couple of comments on each, we have three very influential and amazing women with us today. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start us off with just a few kind of rapid fire questions so that our audience can get to know the three of you just a little bit better. So we'll start here. Michelle, I'm going to start with you, but I'd like all three of you to answer this, please. So I would imagine that in your roles, that comes with a considerable amount of stress from time to time. So after you've had a long day, a long week, maybe a long month, Michelle, we'll start with you, but how do you unwind?
I really recharge. I love to spend time with my husband. I love to kind of like turn off the electronics, sit outside, have a nice glass of wine, and just kind of talk through my day and calm down, chill out a little.
Yeah, Cassidy, what about you?
Uh, funnily enough, really love watching comfort television shows. So things that I've, aware of or have watched before. Right now, my husband and I have started from the beginning. We're watching Frasier. So love to just come and enjoy a classic television show after work.
Awesome. Tish?
Yeah. Music. Music is like sort of the balm for me. Like it gets me excited, it calms me down. When I need to kind of get pumped up and get ready for something, I have my go-to music. When I need to sort of decompress, I have my go-to music. That's my thing.
All right, Tish, so we're going to stay on the theme then of music for the next question. I'm coming right back to you. What is your go-to karaoke song?
I would say anything 90s R&B. Like I just love that era and genre of music. It's so good. So I don't have a kind of particular one. I would just go through kind of like the book and just sort of pick anything in that era. I love it.
Okay, I want to see that sometime. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Cassidy, what about you? Your go-to karaoke?
I have a minor in Spanish, and I have found that singing in another language impresses people enough that you don't have to be on key. So that's been my real secret to karaoke. So I love singing songs by Selena, like Como la Flor, and I like Juanes, another Colombian artist. So it's hot tip: if you speak any other languages, whip that out at karaoke, and no one cares that you can't hit the notes.
Okay, so there's a hot tip that maybe we didn't know we were going to learn today. I love it. Cassidy, thank you. Michelle, what about you for karaoke?
I'm going to be real honest. I'm just kinder to the rest of the world. I don't do karaoke. I appreciate everybody's talents and I know when to stick to mine. So I'm an active and excited participant in the audience and very encouraging for anyone who's got the guts to do it. So
Okay, fair. Love it. Love that. Okay, so let's move on to our third rapid fire question. Tell us about the latest book you've read and one thing that you loved about it. So Cassidy, we'll start with you.
Right. One of the most recent ones I read, which now the title escapes me, but it was a biography on Lady Bird Johnson, who I don't know if we have folks joining from outside of the United States, but was one of our first ladies and based in Texas, which is also where I live. So what was really interesting to me was to learn about a woman who, in the 60s, at a time where it was a different time for women to be existing, how much sway and partnership that she had with Lyndon B. Johnson, our former president, and behind the scenes, what a massive role she played in strategy in all different facets of his presidency. And so just interesting to learn about some of these women that maybe didn't have the exposure that we all have today, and getting to be a part of some of history's moments. Love getting to celebrate them and learn more about them today.
That is awesome. Tish, what about you?
The last book that I read is called People We Meet on Vacation, and it's just a fun read. And so I just loved it. It was whimsical, good storytelling, nothing too deep about it, which was good.
We need those from time to time.
Yeah,
though, right? Michelle, what about a book that you've read?
well, I will say that I'm very much an escapist reader, so I love that kind of fun beach read kind of thing. So the name is escaping me exactly. The last book I read, it's by an author named Avon Ellis, but they're always really fun and they're lighthearted and they're quick reads, and I can just enjoy them and not have to get overly stressed out by a paperback. So that's a good go-to.
Love it. Love it. So Cassidy, I'm going to come back to you for this first question because you were talking about the Lady Bird Johnson book that you read. So as we celebrate Women's History Month, actually the theme this year is celebrating women who tell our stories. So I'm sure that was a great story to learn about, but I would like to pose that question to the three of you. Give us just a little bit of background on your personal story, your personal journey.
Love that. Thank you, Andy. And actually, storytelling is such an important part of my journey, and I'm sure is yours as well as a communicator. So, love that that's the theme for Women's History Month this year. But I think two things when I describe myself, things that I love are telling stories and then creatively combining things to innovate. So, things that maybe wouldn't normally be partnered together or thinking through things that aren't normally considered in the same realm or genre. So, storyteller through and through. My background is in journalism and born and raised in California. Went to Fresno State University. If we have any Bulldog or football fans on the line, and what I actually ended up doing is talking about storytelling and combining things. I pursued an interdisciplinary program in communication, culture, and technology for graduate school. So that was bringing together things that sort of make sense that they come together, but oftentimes communication and technology are things that folks think are on opposite sides of the spectrum. You often have skills in one or the other, but what was really neat about that was learning and growing with people from all different backgrounds, folks that worked at the World Bank, folks that were engineers and developers, and then folks that had more of the traditional kind of communications background. It was there that it piqued my interest in global business and thinking about communication from a business standpoint. And so for the last 10 years, I've been working at global publicly traded tech companies. So predominantly been in the tech space, but have been really enjoying for the last 2.5 years being a part of CSG and in more of that telecommunications space and working more with the WICT group. So it's just been where I think that it's so exciting in getting to experience these different cultures through large companies is one of my favorite parts of my career. Having the opportunity to work with these global companies, having colleagues all over the world, learning about their cultures, and then in turn getting to tell their stories and make sure that they're understanding the stories of our executives and the strategic stories. So again, love the theme of telling our stories because that's really my theme, I think, and how I like to operate. So thank you so much for having me too.
Yeah, I love that. Tish, I'll put this one to you now.
Yeah, so I am born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. I studied business administration at Florida A&M University down in Tallahassee, Florida. So super proud Rattler. If there's anyone that's also a Rattler on the call. And then started my career at Ernst & Young as a public accountant and kind of did that for a couple of years. Kind of quickly realized that that wasn't quite my jam, that it was more kind of core finance that I wanted to get into than sort of the accounting space, which most people kind of to your point, Cassidy, think that they're the same, but they're really not. And so I kind of made my way to Cox 17 and a half years ago, which feels really crazy. But I've started my journey, which is what's made it seem like such a short amount of time where I've had the opportunity to do a number of different things and really sort of get to see various industries, both from a CCI perspective or Cox Communications perspective, which is where I am right now, kind of in my second go around, but also spent some time at the enterprise level and then also spent about 10 years on the automotive side of Cox. Where Auto Trader and Kelley Blue Book are some of the more well-known consumer-facing brands there. And so doing everything from finance to strategy to marketing operations to competitive intelligence, and then now kind of circling my way back into finance. So it's been a journey for sure, but really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Tish. Michelle, what about you?
So I grew up here in Austin, Texas. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, so hook 'em horns. I have a degree in advertising, and I was lucky enough to intern when I was a freshman in the marketing department at what was then Austin Cablevision. And I did that thing where you're getting ready to graduate from college and call everybody you've ever met in your life to try to get a job. And they were getting ready to hire a temp because one of the marketing team members for Austin Cablevision was going on maternity leave, and I was hired and started with the glorious title of temporary marketing clerk. Was my first job here, and Austin Cablevision was owned by Time Warner Cable, and I've been here ever since. So I've been in multiple departments. I started on the residential marketing side, so actually selling cable and helping, do all of the activities that promoted the cable company as a brand. We were the first group to bring in digital cable for Time Warner, so I get to be part of the launch of digital cable, part of the launch of Roadrunner in the market, back when we called it that instead of high-speed internet services. And then I moved over to the media sales side, and I've been on the media sales side now for about 20 years. So I've been with the company 28 years in the fall. So
I'll have to say, Michelle, as a girl from Oklahoma State, the whole Texas hook 'em horns thing hurts my heart just a little bit. If you saw my reaction, but it's okay. I'll forgive you.
at least it wasn't OU.
Right. Still hurts though. So Michelle, I'm going to keep this question with you. So, no surprise, over the past couple of years, we've seen some real significant change occurring in our industry. So in your opinion, what changes do you think we can expect to continue to see over the next 12 months? And I'd like to hear from everybody on this topic, but Michelle, I'll start with you on this one.
So my viewpoint's a little bit different since I am on the media sales side of it. We're not necessarily talking about where we're going with, latent speed on the far end of the reach for the, high end, the high speed internet, and that kind of thing. What we're really seeing is as there's more and more streaming, which is affecting all parts of our industry happening, it's changing the way, consumers are viewing first and foremost what TV is. The definition of television is greatly changing, and how people are consuming it is shifting, but the amount that they're consuming is just going up. And so as an advertiser, it's really about how do you continuously follow the eyeballs, and how do you utilize these new platforms and new technologies that streaming brings to have even better targeting in a way that is really designed to highlight the consumers' privacy, but at the same time, really, get in there with the right message from an advertiser perspective. So we talk a lot about streaming TV. We talk a lot about OTT and what does that mean? And for us, it's really that constant shift of where the eyeballs are. But then the other big piece is that's really changing how people look at television advertising. And that's traditionally been a spot game. It's about ratings points. And you're seeing a lot of that beginning to shift to an impression-based model as we're moving more into TV being digital. You're seeing more of that impression based. So I think you're going to continue to see that shift in what is TV. And then from our standpoint, how do you measure what you're being able to deliver on a platform?
So Tish, from a financial perspective, all of these things, right, have an impact on the bottom line. So I'd love to hear, your perspective of this too.
Yeah, that's right. And I think just, to Michelle's point, as the consumer needs are evolving, competition is evolving, sort of what has been our bread and butter as MSOs is evolving. It's really sort of thinking about how do we make sure that we maintain and manage our businesses in a way that allows us to have that long-term growth. What are those adjacencies we need to get into? What are the infrastructure investments that we need to make sure that we're in the right place at the right time for those evolving consumer needs as they're streaming more and consuming more bits and bytes, as we like to say, kind of what's the right sort of back-end infrastructure do we need to have to make sure that we're providing the best service and best product that we can. And then also, how do we make sure that as they decide that they want to consume content in those various different ways, again, that we're enabling that for them. And then also, how do we think about our commercial customers? So those small and medium-sized businesses, how do we continue to evaluate the market and their needs, and then making sure that we're well positioned to do that? So all of those things are being talked about in addition to our business partners as we support them and modeling out what does that look like, and sort of how do we want to think about those investments for our business in the future.
So Cassidy, this is, interesting from an employee engagement perspective, just all of the changes that our industry and everyone really has gone through in the past several years. So can you talk to us a little bit about how employee engagement plays into this.
Sure, absolutely. I think that two big things that we noticed coming out of the pandemic or that really shifted or accelerated, it's that how important connection is and how there are so many different ways to connect and what connection means, which is great. All of these additional channels, different ways to engage with folks. But on the other hand, that also comes with a lot of noise. It's where you're then bombarded with from every angle, all of these different channels that, when used as a one-off or used strategically can be great, but can then be very overwhelming when they're coming from all angles. So I think this applies both to employees as well as to customers, of in telecom and for companies in telecom. But that idea of personalization and how are you meeting people where they are? And I think that Michelle, you said following the eyeballs. I think it's following the eyeballs and the ears. That it's where how are you getting in front of them, serving their needs and meeting their expectations through the channels that are most meaningful to them. And that's on the employee side. So thinking about when do we send an email versus when do you have a meeting versus a video. So thinking through that, and that's a massive shift that's happening right now. But then also that same thing for your customers. How are you approaching them? How are you working through that? I think one other thing that I think is going to just disrupt business at large, including the telecommunications industry, is this wake of artificial intelligence and chat GPT and where can we automate some of these tasks that are you don't need a human for, but then on the same token, elevate and be innovative and create using that brain power to create brand new trends, brand new patterns. And so I sort of feel like we're at that point that it's like the advent of television or cable or the internet, where this is something that really will be a disruptor, not just in our industry, but in industries at large.
And so when we think about that, when you bring these kind of high level thoughts down to a really personal level, because this changes like this impact all of us in different ways. So for our audience today, as we can all continue to go through this change, what is a key kind of characteristic or maybe a skill that all of you have used in times of change that you feel it is beneficial when you're in kind of an uncertain time? And Tish, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. Change is scary for everyone, just human nature, kind of understanding and recognizing that is just sort of a baseline. But I will say that there is something to be said about being opportunistic in an environment of change, that inevitably something new, something different, something exciting tends to come out of that change. And so, how do you position yourself to be there to drive that forward and to take advantage of those new ideas, those innovations, those opportunities that are coming out of it, and sort of ride that wave a little bit? That it doesn't have to be something big and scary that's sort of happening to you, but how do you kind of get on top of that and then create new opportunity for yourself? I've had the fortune to be able to do that, and that's allowed me to make some of the pivots that I've made so far in my career, and that's really, I think, have helped me become a more well-rounded, not just woman in finance, but businesswoman. And so I think, we have a great opportunity now to be able to do that.
I love that. Cassidy?
I think I'll give you a twofer, two sort of leadership qualities that I've either experienced or that I think have been helpful in times of change are patience and empathy. And I think precisely to Tish's point, there's so much opportunity in change as well, but there are elements that can be a little bit scary or daunting. And so, especially from a communication standpoint, being sure that you're bringing people along for the journey, whether that's your colleagues or your teammates that you're leading, but understanding that not everybody's going to be moving at the same pace that you are. And also that can go again, even as an employee and with the company, where maybe there are things that you want right now or how you envision things to be right now, but the company's changing as well. We're all changing together. So just thinking from other people's thinking about things from other people's perspective, and then also exercising a little bit of that patience that there so many things are rapid in change, but sometimes they're a little bit slower too.
Michelle?
Well, I think Tish brought up a great word, pivot. I think that ability to be flexible and nimble and to pivot quickly and bring ideas to the table, like Tish said, is really important. But particularly when you're a leader, one of the things I think that's so important in leading in times of change is having a foundation that's about your culture as a company, your culture as a team, because structure is important. And if you have a foundation that's about how you interact with people, showing empathy and making sure that you're open with your communication and transparent during communications during times of change, people can count on that, even if the rest of the environment is changing around them. And I think that that balance of having core consistency in times of change is really important, because you have to have a foundation so that there's something to pivot against when you're making all of these changes. So I think that, agree with what both ladies said, absolutely. And I think that part of it is also making sure that you're really relying on strong cultural values for your business, for your organization, and for your team.
That's great.
So many of you know, if you're WICT members, and if you're not, we encourage you to learn more about this. But the WICT network in 2022 released a PAR initiative report. It's something that we do annually. And the report states that the percentage of women in our industry rose 5% to 38%. So we're not quite halfway there, but we're getting there since 2019, despite the she session, the great resignation, all of those pieces. So let's talk for just a minute about how you believe female leaders can have an impact on the future of our industry. Cassidy, we'll start with you.
I think that diversity in thought breeds innovation. So anytime that you can bring more voices to the table, whether that's because gender, gender identity, race, background, all of those different experiences, when you can bring different backgrounds, different experiences, and different perspectives to the table, everybody wins because we all advance due to the innovation that comes from that. So I think that not to categorize all women into one small box, but just the experience that we have as women, as moms, as daughters, as aunts, all of the different experiences that we carry, we bring those elements and can help enhance telecommunications, enhance connection through those experiences. And it just makes me happy to see greater diversity, not only based on sex, but across the board. And that's a trend that it's great to continue to see, because I think that's great for innovation.
Michelle?
I think that I completely agree with innovation. I also think that women leaders are very collaborative. It's very open to ideas, very open to conversation. They want to empower every voice. And so I think you're going to see that that's going to help speed up innovation, because more ideas are going to be able to be openly discussed at more tables. So I'm really excited about the opportunity as we continue to grow and have a more diverse workforce, both from gender as well as from, all manner of reasons and ways, that we're going to be able to have those ideas bubble up more quickly. And if we have leaders that are really open to ideas wherever they come from, we're going to see them being able to implement more quickly as well.
Tish?
Yeah, so I think both ladies make excellent points. And just to sort of build on that, I think women, again, not to overgeneralize, but we tend to be more intuitive. Not that we don't love data, not that we, don't use that side of our thinking as well. But I do think that there's something to be said about taking the data and then sort of adding your intuition on top of it. And I think because of how quickly the industry, the market, the environment is changing, we're not going to always have perfect data to be able to make those decisions and kind of determine sort of the route that we need to take. So how do we leverage our intuition about what we're seeing, our intuition about what we're hearing from those diverse teams that we've got around the table, to then kind of come up with the best answer and kind of best decision based on what we have at the time. And I think that kind of intuitive leadership is probably going to become more and more critical, just because of the pace of the market. You won't have the perfect data.
So we have a lot of up and coming female leaders in the audience today. So what I would like to ask of all of you is kind of the last question of today. What is one piece of advice that you have for our audience as they grow and develop throughout their career? Tish, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I would just say, just be open and lean into what you bring to the table. I think, again, kind of going back to what we just talked about, is that as women, we bring a lot of unique factors and characteristics to the table. And so how do we just sort of make sure that we don't shy away from that, that we lean into those things that make us unique and know that that is our superpower, and really sort of stand firm in that and be confident in that, and sort of use that as a means to, not shrink, share your voice, sit up tall in your seat at the table. So I think those are some things that'll take women a long way, kind of as we think about our future leaders.
I love that. Sit up tall in your seat at the table. That can be applied across multiple situations. Thank you, Tish. Cassidy?
Tish was right on the money with what I was thinking too. I'll expand a little bit as well. I heard someone speak. It was maybe almost 10 years ago now, but the one of the interesting things that they shared was very often we associate leadership qualities with things that are traditionally masculine, like strong, bold, direct, and those are sometimes things that we say we need to be a leader. You need to be those things, but they opened my eyes, and I think this has been becoming more mainstream since, in the decades since I heard that. But traditionally feminine qualities are excellent leadership qualities as well. So empathy, patience, like we mentioned earlier, but also compassion and passion, attention to detail. Those are the types of things, intuition, that not to dismiss those as equally important characteristics, leaning into that, and really then finding your own balance of who you are and taking all of those elements from everywhere and the advice that you hear from all types of people, especially early in your career. Learn from that, try it out, and then find what works best for you, because ultimately there is nobody other than you in the world, that you're the only you. So that's, again, bringing that diversity of thought to innovation, and also looking for places that embrace that, because not every company is like that. And I think that at CSG, one of our guiding principles is authenticity, and to be at a company where every day people are saying thanks for being you. You really brought, I loved that you brought this perspective, or the way that you behaved. I mean, just in the last week I've heard that a couple of times from different people. That finding a culture that really embraces being who you are and having that authenticity. Not every company is for everybody. So finding one that really where you can flourish and grow, that's a great place to work towards in your career.
Thank you. Michelle?
One of the things I'd say is remember that being a leader isn't about being the boss, right? That everybody can be a leader, and you want to be a leader by being able to, be the person that everybody on the team can count on. Be the person that listens intently and asks good questions to move conversations along. Be the person that can be counted on to get things done and to be there. Don't be the person that says that's not my job. Even if it's not your job, help somebody get to the next step of a solution in some way. Those are all leadership qualities that everybody, no matter what position you're in, can do every day, and they're recognized and they're acknowledged. And I think that that's one of those key things, is being able to be the person that people can count on with smart ideas, good questions, that's ready to pitch in.
Andy, if I
Thank you.
could
Yeah.
just jump in, I think Michelle hit on an excellent point of that. Ask good questions. Like, it's because that's something that I've been working with my team on. Of, when I have some technology people that are on my team, and so when you're used to being the expert in your space and kind of being the person that folks go to have all of the answers, it can be a little intimidating when you feel like, hey, I don't know, I need to ask questions. And that there's a lot of intelligence in recognizing what you know and what you don't know, and then just being thoughtful about asking those questions and putting them on the table, rather than trying to assume and maybe not, making the right decision, or walking away with the wrong assumption or incomplete information just because you didn't ask the question. So Michelle, I think that that's one that hit me, just because I've actually been talking with my team about that recently. Of it's okay to ask questions.
Great.
I love, yeah, that I was writing down a couple of notes, and I do love that. Ask good questions. That's great. Thank you. So we have just a little bit of time left, and I want to make sure that we can get to some questions from our audience. And it looks like I've seen the chat kind of out the side of my eye, and it looks like it's really active. So thank you everyone for your awesome comments. Sandra, do we have any questions for the team?
Hey, I don't see any questions as of now on the chat. But
We
if
did have one.
you did, I missed it.
Yeah.
Okay. Will you ask
Yeah.
it?
So
Oh.
Aaron asked,
Mhm.
I've recently toured local municipal services, hospitals, and schools, and mental wellness seems to be at crisis in each entity. Do you have any best practices to help lead people during challenging times?
I've
Well, I
got
think
just, oh, go ahead, please, Michelle.
I was gonna say, I think we touched on some of it, right? In the sense of you have to start with being empathetic and you have to start with being a good listener, right? So, and then going back to what are those foundations of your company that you can kind of hold in as being consistent? Because I mean, there is a lot going on. I mean, we have had large scale conversations in our company where we said, okay, I know there's like 200 people on this call, but you have to feel comfortable to be able to say some hard things. And there have been some hard conversations about things like stress and overwork and that what we call kind of that pandemic pace that hasn't slowed down, that everyone is just running all the time. And so you got to acknowledge that there's a challenge. Don't just try to brush it, to the side, and then, be empathetic and, be a good listener. I think is kind of that beginning place.
And I'll just add too, I think that one other step I had, Michelle, you took the words out of my mouth, and listening. And I think then just showing people that they're not alone and we're all in this together. I think as a leader, it's more important than ever to demonstrate your support, and that where, especially when there are so many things and competing priorities, how do you help your team prioritize? How can they feel that not everything is carrying the weight of the world? And just how can then you as a leader step in and help where applicable and appropriate too? So totally agree with you, Michelle. And then just adding that little extra.
Yeah. Both excellent points, and I'll just sort of add to that and just mention maybe even transparency. I know oftentimes our team sort of may look up to us as leaders and think that we're superhuman people and that we never get tired, we never get stressed, we have all the answers and have it all together. And I think kind of as a display of that empathy of like, hey, I understand, I too get tired, I too get stressed out, or hey, I don't know the answer to this, I'm thinking through it as well, would love your feedback on it, or hey, I'm trying to work through this problem, can we work through that together? I think just sort of that acknowledgement of our own humanity, I think will help people feel comfortable with acknowledging their humanity and at least maybe take some of the pressure off that people are feeling, and it's maybe sort of causing some of the mental health challenges, and then giving people that space to then know that it's okay to kind of take a breath, take care of yourself, and just recognizing that we don't drop sort of everything that's happening as soon as we cross the threshold of work, whether it's virtually or physically cross the threshold of work, that we don't just shed everything that's been happening. So kind of just acknowledging that humanity of people and recognizing it in them, and then also recognizing and sharing it within ourselves.
Great point, Tish.
And we have
Thank you.
another question coming in through the chat. It says, there are so many, this question is from Nancy Owens. There are so many resources and opportunities to help us grow and develop. How do you determine which ones to take advantage of? Tish, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say it's good to kind of self-awareness, I think, will take you a long way. And self-awareness, not just in the things of like kind of criticizing yourself and always just of kind of picking apart what you need to fix. But I think just the awareness of sort of, where am I right now? Where do I want to go? And then what are the things that I do need to grow in that's going to kind of be that bridge for me or help me be successful there? And so then that helps you get really targeted and surgical about, I need to make this investment in this piece right here, because this is going to help me kind of be at that next building block that's going to get me to where I want to go. And then when you get to that plateau, then it'll be something else that you want to work on. And then you can start to prioritize that investment in development. And so just knowing that it's a lifelong journey, you're never going to stop doing that. And so just kind of think about the things that you need right now to help you get to the next place, and then kind of continue to do that iteratively all along the way.
That's great.
I was gonna say, I would add in, there are tons of opportunities, resources. You could take online classes for days. So I completely agree with what Tish said about being able to and analyze where you are and where you want to go and where your gap is. I think that's really key. But I've never known a bad mentoring opportunity. I guess personal relationships are such a tremendous way for you to grow. Great mentoring is a two-way street. Both parties get a lot out of it, but it grows your network. It grows you by learning somebody else's story and how they got to where they are. And, if you're able to work with somebody who's already walked part of the path you're planning on walking, they're going to be able to show you, where are the logs to step over? What are the challenges that you can kind of get a little bit of a head start? And so whenever you have an opportunity to raise your hand and say, yes, I want to participate in a mentor program, do it. Like I'm a huge believer in mentor programs.
Great. I think everybody covered what I was going to say, and just would add to that, keeping an eye on your network. If there are things that they recommend, that's something that I tend to keep an eye on LinkedIn, is keeping an eye out for folks that have shared something that really worked well for them, and that kind of helps weed out some of the surplus of information.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Charmaine to kind of wrap us up, as we just have a few minutes of time left. Charmaine?
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I didn't see any more questions in the chat. So we will kind of just wrap up. I will be sending out a follow-up email with a survey shortly. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about today's panel. And in this email, there will be resources from our amazing panelists, books, podcasts, newsletter recommendations, all the things that you usually ask for will be in this email with links. So please be looking out for that. Be sure to save the date. We have 2 upcoming in-person opportunities, one in Fayetteville, Arkansas on Tuesday, April 11th, and then one in Omaha, Nebraska on Wednesday, April 19th. You can learn more about those on our website, wict-heartland.org. And thank you again so much for celebrating Women's History Month with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
so
your
much.
time. Thank you, Michelle, Cassidy, and Tish. It was a
Thank
great
you.
time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.